Welcome into week 2 of the PFF betting show. I am here again with Judah Fortgang and Mason Cameron. And we're going to get into the game last night a little bit here at the top, with the Packers kind of cementing themselves as a real Super Bowl contender with back-to-back wins against two of the top teams in the NFC last year, in the Lions and the Commanders. Before we do that, if you don't have a PFF Plus subscription, you can go get one to go see in-game grades. If you're going through this weekend and you're interested in how players are playing, what their stats are, you can see that live in-game now on Premium Stats with a PFF Plus subscription. You also get access to the player prop tool, which went 29 of 51 recommendations, 57% on Thursday Night Football yesterday. If you filter here, say you want to bet on the Eagles-Chiefs game, you can filter to that game with this filters window. Click your team, apply filters, scroll through. You can sort by cover probability. You can sort by edge. So say it looks like rushing attempt unders for Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes are some of these top recommendations here. You can filter by position. It's a lot of information. Once you click into these tools, you can see some of the injuries. You can see some of the matchup scores for those specific facets of the prop bet, how the defense did against those prop types. You can see historical hit rates against the last 5 games against similar defenses. You can filter to that, which our data science team did some work to kind of define those similar defenses. You can slide this bar to get some alt lines. A lot of information in here. So go get a PFF Plus subscription and play around with it yourself. Fellas, what do we think last night? I was kind of personally on the side of the Green Bay Packers offense was going to roll, just given Matt LaFleur's history against Dan Quinn, both with the Falcons, with the Cowboys. Jordan Love had a little bit more passing volume than I was expecting, which kind of killed me. I was on under attempts in a few spots, but overall, I think I read it right. What about you guys?
Yeah, this was I also thought, I'm generally high on Washington, but thought this was a perfect spot for Green Bay. Also, was kind of surprised at how good Washington's run defense was in week 1. And I think that kind of led me away from the Jordan Love under attempts, which I think is going to be a very solid spot for a lot of the season, because this is a team that does want to kind of play a run and gun. But my question was really just like, Washington came out and just like did not throw past the line of scrimmage, and that was very clear. And then like once you're in a 14-0 game state against Green Bay with Parsons on the other side, it's like good luck having any long developing plays, and this offensive line could not hold up. One last thing is, I've never seen a game where a defense kind of defended scrambles better than Green Bay did. I think it was like 6 scrambles for like 17 yards against Jaden Daniels. Like, you're going to win a lot of football games against Washington if you can do that.
Yeah, Mason, that's one of the things that stood out to me was just the speed on the Packers defense. With Quay Walker, with Edgerrin Cooper playing the way they are, you add Micah Parsons into that mix. I think that played a big part in the scrambles that Judah was talking about.
Micah Parsons has unlocked this defense. We were talking about it a little bit ago. When you look at their roster, top to bottom on the defensive side of the ball, before the season, just a few weeks ago, it didn't really jump off the page. You had a few really good players, but now with Micah Parsons there, he's really unlocked this defense's ability to get after the passer. Just like Judah said, if you're bringing down Jaden Daniels in the way that they were and really containing him, that's going to lock up a lot of teams with mobile quarterbacks in the NFL. And there's a lot of those out there now. Almost every quarterback in the NFL can move just a little bit. And so that's going to be something that is going to be worth watching moving forward. They looked very, very impressive for the first 2 games, and I am excited to see which way they go, because really the sky's the limit for them right now if they can play the same way they did last night. And just like Judah said, I think Washington's run defense has really impressed me. I was on the side of some unders there for Josh Jacobs, unfortunately, and we almost had one, and then he ripped off his longest run of the night for that last carry, the 10-yarder that just sort of dashed it, and that's unfortunate, but that is the way that it goes sometimes. That's going to be another thing that we're going to watch moving forward, because, if Washington can stop the run and, do a little bit better on offense, play calling was a little bit suspect in some spots. If they can get better, throw the ball down the field, they could definitely be a tough team to beat. I'm pretty high on Washington as well this year, so we're going to see how that pans out.
And the market has responded in terms of Green Bay Super Bowl odds. DraftKings futures right now to win the Super Bowl. The Bills are plus 500. The Packers are plus 600. The Ravens are plus 600. The Eagles are plus 750. So Green Bay has jumped from this team kind of in the second tier coming into the year to firmly in that top group of four in Super Bowl odds. We will jump into our favorite game market bets, and it was a little bit of a rough showing for the fellas last week on some of these recommendations. So some of them hit. The Juju shout out I kind of tacked on that wasn't an official pick that worked out nicely with a 3+, 4+, 5+ reception ladder. But we'll be looking to bounce back a little bit this week.
It's a long season. You got to get the losses out early.
We're learning new things. We learned a lot in week 1, and hopefully we're gonna tail that into week 2 and have a big week. So
yeah, so we're gonna jump into the game market bets to start, and we'll kick things off with Judah. And I think you're gonna go to Miami here.
No, I'm going New England here. And also this should be a good.
I think in Miami is what I was referencing. But
in Miami. See, I can't hear. That's the problem. This is a great illustration of, I think, not only this podcast, of course, going to have some plays here, but I think a lot of value comes in just discussing the games and using that to match against yourself. So I like New England here. I think at within 3, I'd take them on the money line. There was just some movement late, especially. But where I think this play really lies is almost in evaluating the Dolphins offense. So even before we get into the Dolphins offense, I think there is 2 things can be true, but just like I liked Miami last week. And I think we learned a lot about this team, while also like you don't want to overreact too much. And I guess the frame I have here is, especially early on in the season, is like we're going to learn a lot of information, as we said, about these teams. And in week 10, we're going to look back at this week 2 matchup very differently. And we're going to have some knowledge. And I want to be able to effectively say or project where do I think these teams are going in week 10, and where does the kind of asymmetry with the risk lie there. And I think this is a Dolphins team that can, like, it would not be shocking to me. I don't think it's the most likely scenario. It would not be shocking to me if they're picking number 1 overall this year. And I think that is, if we can bring up the graphic here on the Dolphins offense and their time to throw and their depth of target. This is an area where in the peak Miami years in 2022, 2023, Tua Tagovailoa was getting rid of the ball quicker than anyone else in the NFL, but his depth of target was like 10 yards downfield. And they were absolutely destroying teams in that 10 to 19 part of the field. Now, Tua Tagovailoa is still throwing quicker than everyone else. This is last year. We saw more of the same in week 1. We don't have a huge sample of week 1 to know that's largely determinative, but like he's getting rid of the ball quicker than anyone because his offensive line can't hold up. And instead of being able to actually deliver the ball 10 to 19 yards downfield, they're just throwing a lot of checkdowns. And like that's why Devon Achane has become this like receptions merchant. For what it's worth, I think going to be an insanely good DFS play going forward. Like I think this guy is going to see an absolutely insane amount of volume. And maybe his receptions over is a solid look here because like he's going to have a crazy role. But I think you lose almost the muster of this Miami offense when you're just getting rid of the ball so quick. And now the fact that they're down 2 tackles, right? They're like really deep in the well. They're going up against the New England pass rush, which was like 4th in their rate of disrupting the play via pressure last week against what should be a pretty good Las Vegas offensive line. And I see this as a spot where New England secondary is bad, right? That was kind of the spot looking at last week with Geno Smith. I don't think Miami can take advantage of that because they just can't push the ball downfield. And as it is, this is a relatively weak offense right now. And then on the flip side of the ball, I think Miami's going to have a good pass rush. It didn't show in week 1. This would not be the first time that a team had a bad week 1, but the secondary is absolutely horrible right now. I mean, the fact that we're talking about Storm Duck as an injury is reflective of the depth of this Miami secondary. It is really atrocious. Like these guys project all 3 of them as probably bottom 15 cornerbacks right now. And that's a recipe for disaster, especially if the pass rush can't get home. And Drake May is perfectly capable. If you look at his pressure navigation, one stat you can look at pressure disruption. Another graphic we have here is that May was, for those listening just on audio here, May was like top 7 in effectively mitigating pressure. Where he struggled was, I think, at least broken up this way on plays where things were kept clean. He wasn't in a great system. I think he's going to develop there. But even if Miami does get a little bit better on this pass rush, May is perfectly suited to mitigate that and be able to attack this secondary where they are so weak. You add up all these angles. You look at the fact that I think Miami could be an offense that is just so far away from those couple of good years in the McDaniel era, and this is a great matchup, I think, for New England as well, who I don't think is going to be so great this year.
Yeah, I was on the Raiders last week, and I'm with you here. I like the Patriots in this spot. The thing that impressed me with the Patriots, there was a lot to be worried about with their defense and what they gave up through the air, downfield against Geno Smith. But the defensive front was impressive, right? And that's kind of always been a thing of Mike Vrabel defenses. Going back to when he was the Titans head coach, they were first over that stretch. The Titans were in yards allowed per run play. And the Patriots did not allow the Raiders to get anything on the ground last week with Ashton Jinty. Given what we've seen from this Dolphins offense, like I don't think they're going to be able to do anything on the ground. And if they're not able to attack downfield, like you were talking about, I saw a tweet last week. It was like Tyreek's last 30-yard reception was like week 1 of last year, which seems like it can't be possible, but it is. So like they haven't been getting those big chunk plays either.
Yeah. Also, I would just add, like, it looks like Christian Gonzalez might be back. He was upgraded to a limited participant in practice. Jalen Waddle's dealing with an injury himself. There's a lot of uncertainty with this Dolphins offense beyond just like a bad, box score in week 1.
All right, Mason, we'll kick it over to you for your game market bet. What do you got?
So, I'm seeing you kind of made me more of a Dennis Allen believer after week 1 there. So I'm going to ride on the Chicago-Detroit under 46.5. This number started to creep down already. It was at 47.5 when it opened. And I mean, the headline is going to be Ben Johnson back in Detroit, but I think this is a tale of two defenses. I know Judah's got a save game parlay on this one that might head in a little bit different direction, but we'll hop into that here in a second. But I mean, the Bears D was extremely strong through the first 3 quarters. I mean, we talked about it right after that game. JJ McCarthy looked like one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL through 3 quarters, and he was. His passing grade through quarters 1 through 3, 35.5. That was dead last in the NFL last week. I mean, this defense, they were first in EPA per play allowed through the first 3 quarters, 9th in team defense with a 71.6 grade, and they just fell apart. I mean, it took a 90.3 PFF passing grade for McCarthy to win this game. So I don't quite know how that warrants you being, one of the players of the week, but that's going to need to be improvement on the Viking side of the ball there. But I really liked what the Bears defense showed there, and that was without their top 2 cornerbacks. Now, I know Kyler Gordon is still going to probably be out of this one, but looks like they're going to be getting Jalen Johnson back. They're also looking at probably getting TJ Edwards back. So I really like those 2 guys added to this defense, and I just expect the late game improvements on the defensive side of the ball. And when we pair that up with what we saw with Detroit, I'm really concerned about this offensive line. They were 29th in offensive grading at the O-line. That was a 54.6. That's not really a good look. They were 30th in knockdown percentage. They had knocked down on 15%, almost 16% of their dropbacks. 25th in impact block rate, 34%. That's pretty low. Penei Sewell is the only starter that had over a 58 grade. And now you have Taylor Decker. He's going to be dealing with a shoulder injury, missed some practice. So I have real concerns on that offensive line, and I know that we're going to probably be looking at a couple other injuries for the Bears, but I have real questions of if Detroit can block the Bears right now. And I have a lot of questions if they're going to be able to block a lot of teams this year. And if they can't, this offense sort of crumbles. That was their bread and butter for so many years, is being stronger in the trenches than other teams. And that's not going to be the case this year if they can't fix that pretty quickly. And then when we go to the other side of the ball, I know that Detroit got beat up by Green Bay, and we just watched Green Bay do the same thing to Washington. Washington's not quite the defense that we saw from Detroit, But I really like some of the playmakers in this Detroit defense, especially in the back end of the secondary. You got Brian Branch, you got Kirby Joseph. DJ Reed didn't play a great game, but he's a talented player. Terrion Arnold. I really like what they can do. And when we look at what the Bears offense did, I have some concerns with Caleb Williams' accuracy. I mean, everybody does. Everybody saw some of the clips of those missed throws. He had a lot of guys that were schemed open, running free downfield, and he just missed a ton of throws. He had the highest uncatchable inaccuracy rate last week, 32.4%. I mean, he didn't put the ball in danger, but inaccuracy always eventually leads back to turnovers. So that's something that I'm going to be watching forward, and you can't do that against a pair of safeties like Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch. Brian Branch had the third highest coverage grade in the NFL last week, a 91.3 grade. He had that pick six called back, but if they get that pick six, this is a 14-17 game late in the third, and it's sort of got new life for Detroit. So I'm really leaning that way in this one on the under. I know Judah's got a same game parlay that goes a little bit the other direction, but Judah, what are you seeing in this one?
Yeah, well, same game parlays are not necessarily trying to predict the more likely thing to happen, which is, I think, kind of the angle you took. What I want to play here is this Lions deep passing game getting going, specifically through Jameson Williams. And I think it does touch on a lot of the points that you make. First, will be actual SGP. Jared Goff, 300 passing yards, under 33.5 attempts. And Jameson Williams, 100 yards. This is 70-1 on DraftKings. Chicago's, as like we're talking about the secondary, yes, they're going to get back Jalen Johnson. That's obviously relevant. This was a team that created perfect coverage. Perfect coverage is when no coverage player makes a mistake, as charted by our PFF grades. This was a team that was second worst in the NFL at like 14% last week, which is actually one of the lower numbers of any team any week since we started collecting this data. I think that's going to be a major problem, is their coverage and also the way the coverage interacts with this pass rush right now. And I think, Mason, to your point, I would be somewhat concerned about the Lions offensive line, but we have a very we should have a long-standing prior that like Taylor Decker and Penei Sewell are going to be a great tackle duo. Like I don't think I'm so concerned. And certainly in this spot, like I don't think that Montez Sweat at this point, and I can't pronounce I can't pronounce that name for some reason.
Like, these guys valiant effort right there.
What?
I said that was a valiant effort.
Valiant effort. That's what counts. These guys are mid-level pass rushers, right? They're going to have PFF grades in that are going to rank, I think, like between 40 and 60 this year. I don't think they're going to take advantage. And then you look at the fact that like this was a Bears defense last year that was bleeding explosive plays, dead last in the NFL over the second half of the season. Like Jameson Williams is going to get some run on Tyreek Stevenson. Tyreek Stevenson also like this is a chart I should have brought up, but like one of the worst at preventing separation. I think the worst actually at preventing separation last season. This is just a spot where I can see the Lions being very aggressive early, taking their shots downfield as the protection holds up, which I think is very different than last week. And then like going into sort of cruise control mode and having some success on the ground, which they did not have any of last week. Yeah,
the Bears. Are you forgetting the first rule of Jameson Williams though, Judah? Single high. The Bears were very low in single high rate last week. Dennis Allen, typically that's the case. Like that would be the thing that kind of gives me pause a little bit. Plus, you're getting Jalen Johnson back, it looks like. So I definitely like any time that I can take a chance on upside with Goff, Jameson Williams. Like it's not easy to twist my arm there. I'm just a little bit worried about the matchup.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you raise a good point. We've got Taylor Decker, we've got Penei Sewell. They're both excellent tackles. I think that one of the places that really has to worry you is right there in the interior. Christian Mahogany, Graham Glasgow, Tate Ratledge. Glasgow, let me pull this up real quick. 34.4 run blocking grade. That's 30th in the NFL. Now he was 10th in center run blocking or pass blocking grade, 71.9. So not the worst thing, but equated out that ended up being the lowest graded center in the NFL in week one. That is a huge concern. It remains to be seen if the Bears can really take advantage of that on the interior with like Javon Dexter, and looks like Grady Jarrett's potentially going to be out of this one. But that's I think that they've played bad enough, or at least the showing in week 1 was bad enough that it's a concern against any defense in the NFL for me right now. But I definitely do see where you're coming from with, I mean, this Bears defense last season started off very, very strong. Now, new scheme, new team, a lot of new faces. They started off really strong, but then they ended up as one of the worst defenses in coverage last season. So that is definitely something that should be a concern. It will be something that we watch moving forward. Like I said though, Ben, I think I'm a Dennis Allen believer now.
That waned a little bit last week, given that I had Bears plus 1.5 and Bears in circa and Bears money line, and that collapse pained me a little bit. But generally, yeah, Dennis Allen's defenses, when you take out 2024, there was like a stretch from 2018 to 2023 or 2019 to 2023 where they were like a top 10 defense consistently without like super great talent. Like they had Demario Davis and a few pieces, but generally I'm a believer. All right, we'll move on to my game market bet, and it's probably the game of the week right here. Super Bowl rematch, Eagles against Chiefs. And it never necessarily feels good fading the Chiefs as home dogs, but I'm going to do it here with Eagles -1, -1.5, depending on where you can get the line. And this is basically, we talked a lot last year about being concerned about the Chiefs' pass defense over the second half of the year, and those concerns didn't necessarily go away in week 1 against the Chargers, where Justin Herbert was able to attack downfield. Obviously, the Eagles are going to want to be a run-first team, but like they have the ability to get vertical with Devontae Smith and Jalen Hurts, and that's honestly probably the best thing that Jalen Hurts does is those vertical throws. So like explosives in the passing game, I think that you could potentially see that there for Kansas City. If you just look at their defensive EPA per play rank allowed overall, weeks 1 to 9 last year, they were 9th. And since week 10 of last season, excluding the playoffs, so regular season only, that's dropped down to 21st. So like this, we generally think of these Chiefs defenses, especially post like Tyreek Hill era of the Chiefs, as like the defenses were largely carrying the team along with Mahomes being able to propel the rest of the offensive roster. But they've been below average since week 10 of last year in terms of EPA per play. And then you look at the other side of the ball. All right, we've talked about it before. They're not explosive. 57 plays of 20-plus yards since the start of last season. That's 26th in the NFL. Eagles, very good at limiting explosive plays. They're the only team to allow fewer than 50 explosive plays since the beginning of last season. And the pass defense, right, I do think we're going to see some regression there. And we saw it in week 1 against Dallas. Adoree Jackson is a guy that teams can target. I don't necessarily know if it's a guy that, like, the Chiefs are best suited to target out of potential offenses, given their injuries at wide receiver. Rashee Rice suspended. Xavier Worthy was surprisingly a limited participant in practice. I tend to side that he's not going to play, but I guess there's a chance. But even if he does, right, this is not an offensive matchup anymore against the Chiefs that I'm scared of, especially with a defense that still has a talented roster despite some of those losses. You're going to have Jalen Carter, hopefully, for this game. Hopefully he's not spitting on Mahomes and getting himself kicked out. I just think that taking the Eagles under a field goal, like this is a spot I'm comfortable.
Yeah, I think.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Great podcasting. Like these are the kinks you got. I think there's some signal I think in how Dak Prescott attacked the Eagles, which is extremely aggressive downfield. I think he had the highest ADOT of any quarterback in week 1. And first off, Tyquan Thornton erasure here. Guy's if we want to talk about an SGP, there are no lines up, but would love to bet on a Tyquan Thornton long touchdown. Maybe we'll have to wait until a little bit later to get that SGP in. But I think the points you're making lead me to the over. And I actually agree with most of them, which is that like this is not a Kansas City defense that has been good really since the back half of last year. And then you've got almost 2 points working here. This is like not really so data driven. I guess I'll take my usual hat off here. Patrick Mahomes has basically been inversely good to his defense. Like when his defense is better, Mahomes is worse and vice versa. That's been true throughout his career. It's been true even on the game level, where like he puts up his best games when his defense is relatively bad. And I do have concerns about the Eagles. We've seen so many times over the years, like, well, we anticipate as a coverage guy who is like really terrific. Just the next year, it's so unstable. Like, I have no idea if Quinyon Mitchell is going to be as good as last year. In fact, it's probably unlikely. And his underlying numbers last year suggest that he was way overperforming his actual production, which leads me to say, like, you've got one weak link in Adoree Jackson. He was getting torched. And I'm not so convinced that, like, given the scheme that they're playing in now, and given the fact that they've got someone who's being burnt on the other side, like, that doesn't change everything. Like, there are real kind of second order effects here, in addition to the fact, like, this Philly pass rush did take a step back from last year, that we didn't see Jalen Carter. All that is to say, I think Mahomes is the perfect quarterback to mitigate the effects of the pass rush. And I think this Philadelphia defense is still priced as that great team from last season. And I want to bet on Mahomes in this spot, because I don't think the Eagles defense is as good as last year. It's very hard for any defense to maintain the production they had. I like the over in this spot.
See,
and Tyquan Thornton.
And another thing that, Ben, you just brought up there is that there is going to be regression for this Eagles defense. It's something that we saw in week 1. Are the Chiefs the team equipped to take advantage of that? I don't necessarily think so, because we talk about their coverage drawbacks, Adoree Jackson, Quinyon Mitchell, but really where this defense is still strong is Cooper DeJean in the slot, and then Jahad Campbell at linebacker, who had the third highest coverage grade at the linebacker position, 85.9 last week. And when we look at what the Chiefs are posting up there with their weapons right now, you have Travis Kelce, who is going to move around a little bit, going to play inline, going to play in the slot. He's going to draw a lot of Jahad Campbell. And then you have Hollywood Brown, who played the Rashee Rice role in the slot, which I think surprised a lot of us. We thought it was going to be Juju there. But that really lines up with where this Eagles defense is strong, and I think that that's going to have a multitude of effects on drawbacks for this Chiefs offense. And I mean, when we look at what the Chiefs trends were last year, they covered only 4 of their 6 games in Arrowhead. That's not really a great look for them. Now, granted, the markets usually give them some pretty large favorites at home, and now they're a dog. So it is a little bit of uncharted territory, but I agree with you here. I like the Eagles at -1, -1.5.
All right. We will kick it over to some prop bets, but before we do that, you can go and play some game market bets, some prop bets, whatever you want over at DraftKings. Whether you want to do Eagles -1, whether you want to bet on this under in the Bears-Lions game. I kind of like the over in Jaguars-Bengals, even though it's up there, and we might hit on that game a little bit later. But the NFL season is rolling, and every touchdown can bring you closer to a payout with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Every game is another chance to cash in. Don't watch the action, win with it. DraftKings Sportsbook delivers the unmatched intensity of the NFL right to your fingertips, from first touchdown scorer to anytime touchdown props, or the thrill of live in-game betting. Every snap is loaded with opportunity. New customers, this one is for you. Bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly, plus score over $200 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. The season's heating up. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code PFF. That's code PFF to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you place your first $5 bet, plus over $200 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino Resort, Kansas, 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Fees may apply in Illinois, void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. NFL Sunday Ticket offer. See sportsbook.draftkings.com/promos. NFL Sunday Ticket offer for new subscribers only and auto renews until canceled. Digital games and commercial use excluded. Restrictions apply. Additional NFL Sunday Ticket terms at youtube.com/go/NFL Sunday Ticket/terms. Limited time offer. All right, we're going to jump into prop bets here. And I'm going to walk through some of the player prop tool as we're talking through things, show you the kind of information you get. I know I did at the top of the show. But Judah, the aforementioned Jaguars game, you like something here.
Yeah, taking the Trevor Lawrence over. This is at 238.5. I think this is a spot where there's not so much signal we can gain from the output performance against Carolina. Jacksonville went up very early. They actually even still passing relative to expectation were positive. They were about 1% above expectation in spite of the blowout. Don't need to spend so much time. This is a Cincinnati defense that projects to be one of the worst in the NFL here. But I think what's particularly interesting is that Lawrence has a tendency to throw deep. He at the last season, previous seasons, has had one of the highest deep attempt percentages. When you're playing against Carolina and you're up so early, I think there was kind of a natural tendency to be less aggressive. I anticipate that to continue. And just when we look at the anticipated volume numbers by virtue of the Jaguars being a pass-heavy offense in what I think is a really good matchup against a Cincinnati defense that I think is going to be one of the worst in the NFL and does not have the pass rush to really take advantage of the Jaguars' relatively weak offensive line. And I think we're just going to get a bunch of passes and a bunch of yards.
Yeah, and you can see here, the Bengals' defensive numbers from last season, not great against quarterback passing output, like you mentioned. And I honestly think a lot of these Jaguars' offensive numbers, when you're looking at just last year, are going to undersell what we're going to see from them this year. Right? They didn't have to necessarily do a lot in Week 1 against the Panthers. I'm a Liam Cohen truther. I think this offense is going to look better under him. And like I mentioned, this is a chance that there's a chance that this game shoots out, right? If we can get the non-weeks 1 to 3 Bengals, right? If we get a little bit more of a mid-season Bengals offensive performance, there's a chance Jaguars are pushed to high pass volume, and we can get high scoring back and forth affair, which lends itself to obviously the over for Lawrence here. And it also lends itself to the SGP angle that I put in here that I'm just going to talk about now since we're already on this game. And I had Lawrence 300-plus yards, Brenton Strange 80-plus yards, Jaguars -3.5, 55-1. And basically the thought here is the Lawrence pass game stuff we talked about, but the Brenton Strange piece of it, the Bengals allowed the second most yards to tight ends since the start of last season, behind only the Chiefs. We saw in Week 1 against the Browns that Harold Fannin had a big game for Cleveland, right? So I think this is something that we're still going to see this year with the Bengals struggling to take away tight ends. And Brent Strange had a pretty nice Week 1, even with low volume, right? He had 4 catches for 59 yards. He's an athletic tight end, right? There's some big play potential. And if we're getting high pass volume from Jacksonville in a matchup against Cincinnati, where it's a favorable matchup, plus the Travis Hunter piece of this, they're saying he's going to play more defense. I don't necessarily know what that means. Does that just mean he's going to play more snaps? Does that mean his snaps are going to be weighted more to defense? So potentially fewer Travis Hunter snaps on offense if they're trying to keep his snap count down. We'll see what happens there. But either way, I think there's some upside with Brent Strange at 80+. And just those 3 legs, right? You're getting 55-1. So interest there.
And something else to take a note of is when we look at game script and things like that, Travis Etienne had a really great week last week, and obviously they went up by a lot pretty early and they just were able to run out the ball and run the clock. What I see when we look at this matchup, and especially when you think about, okay, we have Joe Burrow on the other side. What do we want to do as an offense to help limit them offensively? Well, we want to control the ball. We want to run it. And, Travis Etienne, he had a really great game. So your logical side of your mind would go, hey, that's the direction that we should go. Let's look at some of his lines. But I think that when you look at actually how well the Bengals played against the run, now granted, it was against the Browns, so you have to take it with a little bit of grain of salt. But they were the 4th in PFF run defense grade as a team. They had 76.2, and a big piece of that was Wilson. I mean, Logan Wilson was so good. Let me look up his run defense grade here. 88.0. That was 4th among all linebackers. So he was incredible against the run. I think that's going to be play a big part in how this game will go. And I think you guys are right there with it with, we're going to need to throw the ball. We're going to have to beat them, boat race them. And I think with Liam Cohen, they might actually have the dogs to do it.
Yeah, and the other piece of this, I lost my train of thought. So maybe we'll get back to the other piece of this later. I knew I wanted to talk about something else. ETN did look great, though, in week one. That's not what it was, but ETN, I was on some ETN stuff. Unfortunately, it was not rushing super big alts. It was rushing plus receiving. So didn't necessarily get there, but he looked like the type of back that they thought they were getting when they drafted him.
Yeah, he was excellent. Second highest rushing grade in the NFL last week.
I was also pretty shocked that, the fact that he had the rushing role to begin with, and they just shipped off Tank Bigsby this week, very surprising. And certainly, if ETN's breaking off some 70-yard runs, the Jaguars are going to be in a good spot.
There's Travis Etienne truthers out there on Twitter who've been silent for years now, who are ecstatic after that week one performance. So definitely going to be an interesting watch for the rest of the season. Maybe Liam Cohen saw something in him and knows how to use him. So that's going to be something worth watching for the rest of the way.
All right, Mason, we'll jump over to your player prop.
So for myself, this was one that we talked about, Ben, yesterday. I was going back and forth on it a little bit, and we got a little bit more clarity. So what I'm looking at here for my prop is we're going to go over to the Seattle and Pittsburgh game, and I'm taking the under on Jackson Smith-Njigba, under 66.5 yards and minus 110. For me, it was a little bit of a back and forth between him or Cooper Kupp at under 33.5. But with Joey Porter being out, that's the big draw here. So Joey Porter is looking like he's probably going to miss this. He missed practice Wednesday and Thursday with the hamstring, and that really frees them up to move Jalen Ramsey back to the outside, where he's a more natural fit. Now, he's so good that they were able to be like, hey, go and play in the slot and still be the best defender on our team or in our secondary. And he played great, but they didn't really move him out to cover Garrett Wilson, and Garrett Wilson ended up having a big day. I don't think they're going to make that mistake in week 2, where Jackson Smith-Njigba was pretty much this entire Seattle offense. He was targeted on 56.5% of his routes. That was most in the NFL by any receiver who ran 10 or more routes. He had 124 receiving yards. The rest of the Seahawks had 26 receiving yards. That's not a good look for a team. Any other defense is going to take that guy away and force you to beat them with somebody else. And I think that the Steelers have that with Jalen Ramsey. He had 87.5 coverage grade. That was 5th at the cornerback position. 0.25 yards per coverage snap, 2 forced incompletions, 56.3 passer rating allowed. Those are incredible numbers from a guy who's just coming into this defense. It really shows the talent you have with Jalen Ramsey, and he can really unlock what they'll be able to do as a secondary. I really like this look for him to limit Jackson Smith-Njigba under 66.5 yards.
I think the big question is, if Joey Porter misses, is Jalen Ramsey going to shadow JSN? I tend to think no. He might. I would agree that he's their best cornerback. So maybe it's the smart thing to do. I don't necessarily know if it's what Pittsburgh's going to do. The thing that could be playing in this favor is, I came out last week and was like, I think the Steelers' run defense could bounce back. It absolutely did not. Just ran all over Pittsburgh. That was an issue at the end of last season. And the Seahawks do want to be a run-first team. Right? They weren't really able to run the ball super efficiently against San Francisco. But if they are able to run the ball, maybe that lowers overall passing volume. The thing that would scare me is just what you were talking about. JSN is the guy. They aren't necessarily throwing a ton to other people. But if it's run-heavy script, if Jalen Ramsey does cover him, I can see the path for sure. And there is an edge on our player prop tool, as I was showing, 12.6% to the under.
Yeah, I got to be honest. I was curious enough to take JSN over as my prop. For a lot of the reasons that you mentioned. I don't think that Pittsburgh's going to shadow, nor do I think that Seattle will let them. They're just going to move JSN around the formation to, I think, get him in spots. This guy had like a 54% target rate. Do I think he's going to have a 54% target rate the rest of the way? No. Do I think like he might have the biggest role of any wide receiver in any offense? Yes. I mean, we're talking about like Cooper Kupp, I think, is complete dust at this point. He was the worst graded wide receiver last week. We saw he fell off a cliff at the end of last season. I just don't think you can bank on any production from him. And we're talking about Torrey Horton as the other receiver. Like this is not an NFL receiving core. And I think that JSN is just going to get a ton of volume. And I can see a spot where if Seattle's playing from behind and forced to throw, he could get 15 targets. That might only be 33 passes. But like the role is just way too big at this point. Certainly for me to take the under, but I think the over makes sense too. Just this role is going to be insane.
First off, Judah, this is a pro Torrey Horton household, okay? No, but I mean, I definitely see where you guys are saying. The big question is, what do they do with Jalen Ramsey? And I find it hard to believe that they wouldn't try to at least, put him on the same side of the field, shadow him as much as possible. Now, to say, are they going to go there and just say, Jalen Ramsey, take Jackson Smith and Jigba out of the game? Possibly not. But I think that they're going to make more of an attempt to get that positive matchup, because that ended up being a huge issue for them last week when they failed to adjust against Garrett Wilson. So,
can I bring up a different point on this game?
What's that?
Or can I bring up a different question on this game?
Yeah, bring it up.
I think, first off, I think the run question is very important on the Pittsburgh side of things. And like I think it's a totally different beast trying to defend Justin Fields and the rushing attack just because of the threat he presents. So I still leave out some hope. The thing to me that I can't get past is, and this is more kind of a post-mortem on last week, is that TJ Watt was shut down by Armin Membu. Like he was the number one tackle. I don't think there's any, and despite that, Pittsburgh still put up terrific pass rush numbers, right? It speaks to the depth of this team. Like, I don't think there's a world in which that happens again. Like, TJ Watt is not getting shut down, even if he's lining up against Charles Cross, who's like the only above average pass rusher. The Pittsburgh pass rush should be going bananas on this Seattle offensive line. And we spoke a ton about this last year, of like the situation dependency of Sam Darnold, both in terms of the game script and like he needs to be playing from ahead to be effective, and also the fact that this is a quarterback who crumbles under any sort of pressure. And like Pittsburgh should be doing that on a crazy high rate of plays. This might be one of the biggest mismatches, if not the biggest mismatch in the NFL in this regard. Yeah,
I was surprised how little play action we saw from Seattle in week one. Right, so it was like when Darnold was dropped back, it was straight drop back, which they need to avoid as much as they can. I know the offensive line, they invested some to improve it, but to your point, still not a great unit, and especially against this pass rush. Want to avoid those situations as much as you can. Before we jump to my prop, I realized bad hosting job on my part. The prop culture segment that we aired out last week, going to bring it back this week. So if you have any prop bets that you like, throw them in the YouTube chat if you're watching live. And we'll put those together, bet it each week. Last week, unfortunately, did not hit with David Njoku's over not going over and McMillan's reception over not going over. But we'll throw those three picks together in a parlay, bet it each week, and at the end of the season, those proceeds will go to charity. So,
I like that. Walt, I smell a winner from you. Walt in the chat, drop your win in bed. I smell a winner from you.
All right, we got a shout out from Mason. My prop bet of the week is Sterling Shepard over 2.5 receptions plus 130. Getting a little deep here on a Monday Night Football game, but if you just look at the Tampa Bay wide receiver rotation with Chris Godwin out, with Jalen McMillan out, Emeka Egbuka 36 routes, 6 targets. Mike Evans 33 routes, 8 targets. Sterling Shepard, 27 routes, 6 targets. All right, so he's a clear number 3 in that group. He should be on the field most of the time when they're in 3 wide receiver, right? They weren't really rotating in a ton of other guys. And yes, this is a difficult Houston pass defense to complete passes against, right? It's one of the better defenses in the NFL. But I'm really just kind of siding on snap volume is going to be there for Sterling Shepard. Baker Mayfield is third in the NFL in completions since 2024, right? So this is an offense that has high pass volume, partially because they're passing the ball at a decent rate, partially because they've had high play volume because they've been moving the ball effectively. Maybe that comes into more question here against Houston. But I think with how much Sterling Shepard is on the field, he'll rotate in the slot away from Derek Stingley and Kamari Lassiter occasionally. Like 3 receptions at plus 130 is something I have interest in this week. This is also a Monday night doubleheader. We got him back.
Oh, we're back.
They did it right.
We're
they did it right. We don't have any of these 7-8 games overlapping. The East Coast dads can go cry a river. We got a 7 and 10 split up the way it should be.
Yeah, and it's the games are also both good. Like usually when we have a Monday night doubleheader, it's like one of these games is an absolute stinker.
Yeah.
But these are both games like I'm interested in watching with Bucks Texans and Chargers Raiders. All right, we're going to jump into our SGP, which is honestly just Mason's SGP because we already talked about me and Judah's with some of the bets we had before. But before we do that, as parents, we do everything we can to set our kids up for a successful future, academics, team sports, college admissions. But what about getting started financially when they're out on their own? Fabric makes it easy for you to set up an investment account for your child now that grows with them and helps prepare for their financial future. There are some things school doesn't really teach you, like how to handle the financial world, or that you have to plan now for a successful future later, and that includes for your kids. Fabric makes it easy for you to set up an investment account for your child now that grows with them and helps prepare for their financial future. Fabric by Gerber Life was designed by parents for parents to make it easy to plan for and manage your family's financial path. With a kids investment account from Fabric, you can start investing in your child's future today. While your kids can invest when they're minors, a UGMA kids investment account allows you to invest on their behalf now and gives their investments more time to grow. Funds can be used for nearly anything benefiting your child, from tuition and books to summer camps and after-school activities. And when they're adults, they can use the funds for their first home, new car, or even to start a business. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their family. Start investing in your child today at meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. That's meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. Portfolios managed by Fort Washington Investment Advisors Incorporated. Additional services provided by Apex Clearing Corporation. All investing is subject to risk. Learn more at meetfabric.com. All right, so we mentioned the Trevor Lawrence, Brenton Strange, Jaguars -3.5 SGP for me. We mentioned Judah's golf over yards, under attempts, JMO, SGP. Mason, what do you got to round us out?
You know, Michael in the chat. Michael, you're sharp. I like that. We're going with that Jets game. We're going Buffalo at New York. New York plus, I'm teasing it a little bit. We're going New York plus 3.5. We're going to go Justin Fields plus 10 rushing attempts. Breece Hall plus 70 rushing yards. Garrett Wilson plus 70 receiving yards. This is 10-1. So not really the home run swing, but I think this one has a pretty solid chance to hit here. The Jets play the Bills really close in New York. They're 2-1 over the last 3. One of those games was with Zach Wilson under center. That was that game where, Aaron Rodgers, tough break there in MetLife to tear his Achilles. Justin Fields is a play that I really like this week. I really think they're going to use his legs a lot. We saw that a lot with the Ravens. Now, the Bills' defense struggled mightily. Obviously, it's against a really good offense like the Ravens, but I think you can see the Jets trying to do some similar things, especially with Justin Fields and his athleticism. The Ravens had a lot of success on their design runs with Lamar, and Fields has gone over 10 carries in 51% of his career starts, including 4 of his last 7 starts. So I'm really liking his ability there. I think that they'll try to get him outside of the pocket on their passing plays. They're going to run some play action with how good Breece Hall was. And then I think they're going to have some designed runs, some read options to really get him moving and get this defense going side to side, because Buffalo just really, really struggled, man. Another one that I'm liking is going to be that Breece Hall plus 70 rushing yards last week, 19 for 107. Obviously, we took a little bit of a hit there because we thought the volume wasn't going to be there for Breece Hall, but he, obviously was excellent. And Derrick Henry absolutely gashed this defense last week with 160. And now I believe they're going to be without Ed Oliver. I did not check the injury report this morning to see how he was coming along, but it's looking like they're not going to have Ed Oliver, who obviously saved the game for them last week with that fumble. And Hall, Breece Hall has his best games of his career in New York against Buffalo. In 2024, he had 18 carries for 113. 2023, 10 carries for 127. So let's go, Breece. Have another big old day for us. And then Garrett Wilson. I mean, Garrett Wilson is a play that I love. This Buffalo coverage unit has really, really struggled for quite a while. When we look at some of their metrics in just in defense overall, they have not really improved much over this last year. Last season, they were 32nd in run defense, 48.4 PFF run defense grade, 42.1 in coverage. That's 30th. This year doesn't look like it's going much better. 57.9 run defense grade, 27th. 48.3 in coverage, that's 31st. I don't really love what we're seeing out of Buffalo's defense. I know that this came against a Ravens offense who is excellent, but I have a lot of questions that stem way further than week one of this season. So I am going to be riding with Garrett Wilson. When we just look at this coverage unit, it has really, really struggled. That's why they went corner in the first round. Now, they don't have Hairston because he's on the IR, but what we're seeing is they had last week 26.1% of their passes went for 15 or more yards. That's the worst in the NFL. They had a 61% open target percentage. That was bottom 10 in the league. I think that you're going to see a lot of open grass for Garrett Wilson, just like he did last week. And I think that this Jets offense actually has the juice to take advantage of some of those plays against this Bills defense that has just struggled quite a bit.
Yeah, Jets +7 was one of the first bets I jumped on when that line came out. And it's down to 6.5 now. But, like, with the way that their rushing offense played in week one, what we know from the Bills, how they want to set up defensively, like, yes, I don't know. The Ravens gash everyone, right? Like, I don't want to, like, fixate on that. But this Jets offense, with a rushing quarterback, with an offensive line that looked good in week one. You mentioned Armand Membu was our highest graded tackle. Like, this is an offense that can replicate pieces of that, right? And getting a touchdown at home, I thought was good. So I even like bumping down the line to 3.5 like you did here, Mason, in this SGP, and just kind of telling the story of the Jets winning on the ground and their passing volume going through Garrett Wilson, because who else is it going to go through?
Right.
Yeah, I think that's right. Also, I just want to, I guess it's the third time I mentioned this, but like Armand Membu, number one tackle against TJ Watt, has got to be like the most signal of any individual performance that we can glean from week one.
Dude, I took a lump on that one. I took a lump on that one last week. I thought TJ was going to have himself a good game, and he got absolutely stonewalled. So I'm right there with you. I faded this Jets team last week. I'm not making that mistake again this week.
Yeah. So rookie tackles, usually not good. To do that against TJ Watt is insane, and he deserves more airtime.
Yeah, as like I'm a Steelers fan, it's might pain me a little bit, but like, is that signal for Watt too? I don't know. Like, the pressure rate and the win rate stuff last year was not as great. So I still think Watt is a very good player, right? And you can have a down game against a rookie tackle, but could be signaled that way too. All right, that is all we got for this week. It looks like the prop bets in the chat so far are Justin Jefferson over 5.5 receptions, and Justin Field anytime touchdown. If we get any stragglers in here, we'll throw them in to get the 3-pick parlay rounded out. But like I mentioned at the top of the show, in-game grades are live on premiumstats.com. So that's a good place to go while you're watching the games. Go check out who's playing well on first run, right? All of this stuff is subject to review, and those things can change. But check out who's playing, right? If you want to check out snap counts for betting or kind of target data in game with grades, can go check that out. You can also use the new player prop tool, which, like I mentioned, was 57% hit rate on our suggestions last night on Thursday Night Football. So go check it out. It's a good place to do some research. It's a good place to check out the odds and see where we have some edges based on our projections. So that's all we got for this week. We will be back next week. Good luck, everyone.